Hey, and welcome back. So on this video, we're going to talk about market voice. All right, and just as a disclaimer, as we get into things, I am going to bleed over a little bit into user research, but we're going to dive into user research a little bit deeper later on, but this does kind of bleed into it. So if you're talking to someone who's a purist in terms of market research versus user research, which I'll explain the difference there in a upcoming video, they may disagree with me lumping this in on the right side, but that's neither here nor there. We're going to talk about it anyway, right? Because it's related. So when I talk about market voice, it's like, what is the market saying? Okay. This could be users of competitors' products. This could be users of different products that solve the same thing, right? So for prototyping, that part of Figma, just to give you an example, before I knew about Figma and InVision and Sketch, the only design tool I really knew of was PowerPoint. And so before I became a product manager, as I was working on side projects and things, I would kind of roughly mock things up and prototype things in PowerPoint. When I was doing contract work for Intel and their software group, and I was working with our software partners, and I was trying to explain concepts of how we can improve aspects of their software, I would use PowerPoint, right? But that's more of a substitute product versus a direct competitor, because PowerPoint isn't trying to solve the problem of user interface design, right? That's not their primary focus. So it could span into substitute products, right? So when we get into competitive landscape, we'll go over threat of substitutes, but that's something you want to look at here too for market voice. Is what are people using as workarounds? I have that last here, but what do they love about the competitors' products? What do they hate about it? Why are they leaving? Why did they come to this competitor? What are they asking for? Right. So how do you find this information? Well, social media is great, right? Um, People will post and tag these companies with problems, whether it's technical outages or updates that go awry. I know Facebook recently, again, this is September 2020, Facebook not that long ago had a major UI update on the mobile app and the web interface on desktop. And, some people didn't like it at first. And there was an argument of, is it because it's different? Is it because it's, is it because it's just not a good interface? And I can rabbit trail down those conversations, but I'm not going to. The point is, those are the kind of conversations you want to look for, right? Those are the kind of conversations that indicate what the market voice is saying, and not as granular or specific as a particular product's like UI changes, but if that's why someone's leaving, right, then you might understand that the user base of this type of software that you're designing and product managing for, maybe there's a level of sensitivity to that user base of what the interface and user experience is like. In some enterprise markets, there's a high tolerance for bad user experience, but that doesn't mean that you should necessarily intentionally build bad user experiences, right? It's just the more complex the software, the harder it is to build a great experience. So again, getting off of that tangent a little bit, these are the kind of questions you want to ask about what your competitors' customers or customers of substitute products are asking, and seeing what are they asking for. So if they're asking for things, there's unmet needs, right? And those are real big opportunity areas, because if they're asking for something, something's not being solved, right? And they may be asking for something specific of, hey, I want this thing, or hey, I don't like this thing. And it may be very specific, but you have to ask yourself, should I go just build this thing in my product because my competitors' customers are asking for it and maybe I can steal them away? Maybe, but more than likely, maybe not. And the reason for that is the feature request that they're making is tied to a problem. And that feature may be the best way to solve that problem, but it might not be. The only person who can determine that is you as the product manager, right? So even if a competitor's customer is asking for something specific, try to dig into what the underlying problem is. And if it's on social media, ask, right? If it's on a forum, ask, hey, what problem are you trying to solve? If the competitor's good, they'll have somebody managing that community and asking that question, and then you can take the answer and try to solve it better than or faster than that team tries to solve it. And so uh, there's a reason to hang out around your competitors' customers and the forums that your competitors' customers hang out around, right? Um, for instance, if I was a competitor to Figma, I would probably go into the Slack channel of Friends of Figma, because there's going to be a lot of conversations around my competitors' products in there, and I could probably get a lot of great insights about what they love, what they hate, et cetera, et cetera. Try to get a good understanding through the digital footprint of these companies that your company that you're taking on competes with, to get an understanding of what the market is saying. And you can Google stuff. I mean, there are any number of comparison sites, right? So in YouTube videos where you can compare different companies. So if I typed in, let's just do it. Let's just go to YouTube. Okay. You see, I watch a lot of sports content and political content, but that's beside the point. So if I go Figma versus Adobe XD versus Sketch versus InVision, you can see what people are comparing, right? And it makes sense. Adobe XD is the big player. We're going to go into competitive research in the next video, but Sketch, InVision, these are all Webflow, Photoshop, right? There we go. So these are all competitors, but we can go in here and see what people are saying about the differences, the pros and cons, and that kind of stuff, and get really good understanding of how your product is perceived, right? I know this isn't a marketing certification course or branding, but there's an expression in branding that the company, so Figma doesn't determine Figma's brand. They can try, right? But it's the users who determine what Figma's brand is. All right. And so understanding how you're perceived by the market and how your competitors are perceived by the market is really important to understanding your position in the market, because it's really the users that determine that. So with that being said, that's market voice in the way that I use it. There's a lot. I mean, again, we're not trying to become professional marketers here, so there's a lot of different things you can do in terms of market research. But this is one tool that I use to understand the market, how my company is perceived by the market, so that way I can make informed decisions, help funnel insights into our marketing organization, et cetera, et cetera. So next we're going to go into competitive landscape. But before we do, voice of your customers, right? This bleeds into user research a little bit, but we're going to get into the specifics of other aspects of user research. The way it bleeds in is you want to understand how you're perceived. You want to understand what your customers love, what they hate, why they're leaving, why they switch to a competitor. The more you can get info on this, the more you'll understand like what are showstopper items, right? Like if somebody's switching to a competitor because of something, and they're paying another company to solve a problem that they're solving better than you are, that's something to pay attention to. So again, bleeds into user research, but I consider that more broadly the market voice. And we'll get into competitive landscape here next, and then dive into user research. So let's move on to the next video.